your mind.
Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 30th of September 2018 and we're back in Studio 1. We got things up and running, although we had one or two little issues, but we got it sorted in the end, so good to be back as well. But fair play to Studio 2 for being able to do the job last week.
Didn't let us down.
It didn't let us down, and that's the whole idea of having a Studio 2 there. Right, okay, we have a packed show. We've loads of information, loads of things to talk about. A great guest on. Our guest is David DuByne, and we're going to be talking about solar minimum and all. Why is the weather getting to be a very bad stage? Like last March, you know, about we had the beast from the east, and this summer was quite hot, and we're going to see more extremes going to be happening, and David's going to be telling us all about it. But before we get talking to David and go through all our bits and pieces, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Okay, communication channels, folks.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, the OYM chat room can be found on the website, which is oymradio.com. You will see the link for the chat room there in the menu, so that is the place to be. If you do have a username and password, log in there, and that's where you can pose your questions for David, who's our guest this evening. You will also see the links there for the anti-social media: Facebook, Twitter, the Skype channel, and the email. The email info@oymradio.com, which is where you can fire us off an email. Just let us know if you're listening to the show, if you listened to the show, a first-time listener or a long-time listener, what you think, and so on and so forth. We've also got the link there for MeWe as well, which we are on the MeWe platform. We have said it many, many times. It is kind of a substitute. Well, it's not supposed to. It's better than Facebook, I think, anyway. So we're also on there. Click the link and you can catch us there. Also, the phone number is 046 927 1212. That is the magic phone number if you want to contact us this evening or during the week. Calls from outside the Republic of Ireland, it's going to be 00353 469 271212. Also on the website there, you will see the usual links for the archives, the MP3 archives, if you want to check out previous shows. There is a search facility, so you can just type in whatever you're looking for, and chances are we've probably covered it. So that is there as well. There's also a link there for the OYM shop. There's a few little goodies in there, a few little trinkets if you fancy purchasing something, and also the old donate button if you fancy pressing that and throwing a few euro in the tip jar. That's also very much appreciated.
I just realised I have to take that mobile number off the website there because that number is gone now.
Yes. So please, if you are on the website, disregard the cell phone number because it's inoperable at the moment.
Exactly, yeah.
Did someone drop it and smash it?
No, that's another issue with Vodafone that we mentioned. Right, okay, now just a couple of things that we have to go through. Last week, I just want to make a correction to something I said last week. I did say about a bill that was put through the Dáil, stopping the banks from evicting people, and so they're selling the actual mortgages, securitising it and selling it to the actual vulture funds. Well, apparently, I'm sorry to say, the bill didn't go through. There was a bill that was put in. It was called the Boxer-Moran Bill, and the central bank stopped it. No surprise there. 2 weeks ago, it made the papers, and it was on the Hub Ireland page. So it got to stage 2, I think, as a bill, going through the actual Oireachtas, and the central bank stopped it. So unfortunately, that bill is not there, and that means that banks can still do evictions. Unfortunately, it's a sad state that got stopped, but the central bank stopped it. So you know who's not on your side. Yeah, so obviously it's the central bank. Steve.
Yeah, as most people will probably be aware at this stage, Gemma O'Doherty, who wanted to run for the presidential nomination, unfortunately she hasn't secured a nomination, which is very disheartening, because from what we've seen of Gemma, she would have went in there with the right attitude and kicked some butt, as they say.
Well, I did speak to somebody who was involved with People Before Profit, and I will be mentioning them later on. But basically, Gemma had certain views that they didn't like, and that's why People Before Profit didn't actually nominate her, and maybe Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and the other parties are the same. So divide and conquer is alive and well, regardless whether Gemma is going to go in and make a change, because the President's office has no power anyway. So it's not as if she could do anything, but she could expose stuff while she's in there. And maybe these parties, like People Before Profit and Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, maybe the people who have a conscience and have some integrity could have voted Gemma in to let her try and make a change or expose what's going on, but obviously not. So welcome to Ireland, the most corrupt country in the world. Well, one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Right, the other thing that's on our list is in a website called buzz.ie. And buzz.ie said the Catholic Church still owes Irish state $253 million in unpaid compensation. The Catholic Church is still indebted to the Irish state for the sum of $253 million, it was revealed today. A joint Oireachtas Public Accounts Committee, which convened this morning, heard of the €480 million the Church had promised the state. Only $227 million had been paid. An indemnity agreement between the Catholic Church and the Irish state was struck in 2002, envisioned as a way for the Church to redress for decades of institutional abuse. So the Church still owes $253 million. Why isn't the eviction mobs, the Gardaí and the balaclavas and the gangs from the north with their balaclavas going into the church and kicking the people out and taking the money or taking their stuff to get this money? Why isn't that happening? They do it to the ordinary people and the peasants on the street. Why aren't they going to the church? So all these people, not only is the church not paying their bill to the state, but it's not paying the bill to people who are institutionally abused by the church. I mean, talk about hypocrisy, and people are still going to the church and, you know, put money in the actual tray that goes around. And I mean, I'm just unbelievable at this day and age with there's so much information coming out about the church, the Ryan report on the abuse and the things that went on, and people are still promoting the church. And, you know, it's mind-blowing. It really is mind-blowing that this is going on, and the church is not paying the people that they abuse the money. It's just, you know, unbelievable. Steve?
Just speaking of the church, I actually heard this during the week, and it was said to me, and I actually thought it was real, but I found out then that it wasn't real, but I wouldn't be surprised. You know these machines where you use for tapping your card? You know, the bank machine where you don't have to put in a pin, you can just tap it. Seemingly, this woman, she was telling me that that's going to be next in the church, so they won't be handing around a plate or a basket. It'll be this machine going around and you just tap your card.
Listen, nothing surprises me anymore.
No.
You know?
Anyway, what's next? Yes, that's me. Just a reminder that the Open Minds Conference is only 5 weeks away. Yes, 5 weeks away. Can you believe it? And it's going to be 3 days of great speakers. Myself and Alan are included in there. And we're going to be speaking. And the dates for the show are November the 2nd, the 3rd and the 4th in Dooley's Hotel. That is in Waterford, and I'm not sure if tickets are still available because I know they were selling out fast. But if you have one, we're looking forward to seeing you. If you don't have one, get one.
And we will have speakers on. We'll talk about it at the end of the show. We're going to have OYM speakers on next week on the show, talking about what they're going to be talking about on the show and other bits and pieces there. Now, the last thing on the link before we go to Alan and Steve's week is that just for people, if you're sending us an email in, folks, please, if you're sending a YouTube link or any links, please put a description as to what it is. There is viruses out there that will actually pretend it's an email and have a link to some dodgy website. And it's just that some people might send a link in just to speed up the process, and we understand that. But please put a description and tell us about the link, because it could be a virus, we don't know, and we're not going to take a chance on it. So just a description if there's a link that you're sending regarding YouTube and stuff like that. Right, how's your week? So
what are you saying? That if someone wants to send you a virus, make sure that they put it in the subject line, this is a virus.
Well, no, I'll tell you what happened, right? I got an email from our voiceover lady, Steph, right?
Yes, okay.
And it was, hi, hope you have a good day. Click on this and see what you think. And it was signed Stephanie. But I know that she wouldn't sign it Stephanie, she would sign it Steph. And it turned out that I was right. She said, I didn't send you an email.
Yes.
So, and only because it had her name, her full name, instead of just her small name, the abbreviated name, I would have probably clicked on it because I thought it was coming from her.
Well, you know, actually talking about email, we had the system. It was compromised in work during the week. One of the IT guys was in, and what happened was someone had compromised the system. But what they did, and it's very clever. What they did, it's kind of a similar thing, is they kind of compromise the system, and then they just kind of sat back and watched the emails bouncing back and forward for a period of time. So anyone who would have been watching those emails would know that the boss man is never on the premises on a Friday. If he's on the premises on a Friday, it's for a special reason, but normally he's not there on a Friday. So what happened was, long story short, as they say, an email went to the girl who looks after the accounts from the managing director on a Friday saying, "Hi, Mary," we'd say Mary, "Hi Mary, I'm out and about on the road here. I need you to do a transaction for me. It needs to be done before 3 o'clock this afternoon, and it is for €2,000, and this is where it's to go." And she in the email was the IBAN and all the bank details that were required. And something didn't sit right, and she said she was going to do it, like in the conversation with her after the fact. She said she was going to do it because it was genuine. The email address and all was from who it was supposed to be from, and everything looked kosher. So she was just about to do it, but then she checked with another member of staff. Then the other member of staff said, "You know what? Let's just follow that up with a phone call." So she rang the MD and says, "Listen, we're not sure. This is just kind of, it doesn't sit right with us. Did you send that email?" And he said, "What email?"
Yeah.
And that was it. So all kind of hell broke loose. So yeah, if you do receive any emails, it's probably going back to that. Remember those emails a couple of years ago where you would receive them from someone, a family member. They go, "Look, I'm stuck here, and can you just send me over this? I need to pay for my car, or my car's after being clamped and all this carry on."
I've received one of them from a lady that we both know, and it was obviously her email was hacked. But can I just quickly say, talking about security, the new scam and what the criminals are doing now is that they're putting sellotape on the lock of your door of your house, and they'll come back, and if the sellotape has been untouched, they'll know nobody's been to the house. So you could be on a holiday or something. Yeah. So
that never happened to us. So
yeah. So just be aware that if you see sellotape on your door, it's probably criminals testing to see if you're going to be in or out of the house. Anyway,
moving on. My week's been quite interesting since I was last with you last week, as Alan already knows. My mother-in-law fell down the stairs and broke her hip, so she's been in hospital. They've been keeping her there, and they're obviously doing all sorts of. They've done an operation, and they have to kind of teach her how to walk again with this new hip, or this new implant that's in her body. So that's kind of going on at the moment. We got a phone call we were up with her today, and then we got a phone call to say that they want to discharge her tomorrow. And we weren't expecting it so soon. So when my wife pried, to find out how has this happened all of a sudden, because, yesterday she was going to be there for at least another 3 to 4 days. For the recovery process, and then it was kind of put into the conversation that she had developed, as most people do in the hospital, the MRSA bug. So once they develop MRSA, they basically want them out of there ASAP. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. And I was thinking of Alan last night.
Not sexually, right?
No. I was coursing you last night.
Okay,
actually.
You coursed me. Okay.
I was down on my knees.
I don't even want to picture this.
No. Picture it. Me down on my knees. I think it was about 8 o'clock. It was cold. It was the grass I was kneeling in was damp, and I was at the car door trying to fix the car door. The car door, there was an issue with it, and it wouldn't lock. So I had to tie bungee ropes around the door and kind of wedge it inside the car, and there was and seat belts were involved just to keep the door closed. I had to bring.
This is your.
No.
The green car?
No, this is not the green. This is the red car. We say the red car and the green car. The red car is my car. The green car
relative's car.
Was my father-in-law's car. But as anyone knows, my father-in-law passed away in May. The car's been sitting there, and it was kind of it was basically, look at the draw. I was told, look, you'll get more benefit from the car because it's newer than my own. It's only by 3 years, but it's still newer. So the door, well, actually. Very, very quickly, this is a long story, but I'll break it down as quickly as I can. The green car. I was out and about in the green car yesterday. I was up here with you yesterday. And when I went home, I parked the green car, and then later on, one of the lights was not working on the green car. So I said, you know what, while my wife was out of the driveway, I'll reverse the car in. I started the car up on this horrible whirring noise. Anyway, further investigation, it's the power steering pump. The power steering pump was spewing liquid all over the place. So I got it into the driveway, looked up online about power steering pump, and found all sorts of great information. And basically, I can't do anything with it. It's beyond my capability, so that has to go to the mechanic. So I had to drop my daughter somewhere last night. Couldn't use the green car. Jumped into the red car, and she gets in, sits beside me on the passenger seat, and she closed the door, and it wouldn't close. It just kind of wouldn't close. So anyway, she sat in the car. She held the door closed. We got to where I went to start the car. Then the battery was flat. I had to jump out, get the solar generator, jump out, get the jump leads, get the car started, go her to where we needed to go. While she's holding onto the door, she went into the place where she was going. I then had to get the bungee cords then and try and close the door, if you can visualise all this. And then I was on my knees last night when we got back trying to fix this, and to no avail. Got out this morning and actually got it sorted. I was able to take the whole door panel, the whole card off, so stripped the whole locking mechanism, was able to repair it. So I was quite happy about that. But the green car still has to go has to go to the mechanic now. So yeah, I'm just seeing pounds and euros and dollar signs. You with your door and me with my heating in the car. Yeah, I had to take that out. That's why I was thinking of you, because you were only saying there last week and previously about technology letting people down and all sorts of stuff. Oh, major. Yeah, anyway, that's it. Right. Is that enough? No, that's it. No, when you have old cars, folks, you know yourself, there's always problems. I was only out last week fixing the heating in my car because there was no heating, and the days are getting cold, so I had to fix the fan in the car, and I did take a few things apart to do it. Then I had to fix my wipers. One wiper stuck on the driver's side. So anyway, it's nothing got to do with what we're going to be talking about. But technology, folks, there's something going on. Maybe David might know about it. But maybe it's the atmosphere or something. It's affecting technology in a major way. Before we bring David on, just a couple of things there. I saw more Trump bashing on Facebook feed during the week. And I tried to apply the fluid belief system to the individual, but the fact that he cannot even entertain a thought really says a lot about his thinking and how closed-minded he was regarding information that challenges his belief system. I also found out that the political party People Before Profit are pro-vaccine. Did you know that? I did not know that, no. They're pro-vaccine. So basically what we've done is they did a video. I've sent you a link to the video. Promoting pro-vaccine. So what we've done is we've sent the promo video to Dr. Rima Lebeau, and who's a medical doctor for 44 years, and we've asked her to have a look at the video and to come on the show, and we're going to be talking about vaccines and her thoughts on the video. So that's going to be interesting. Why are People Before Profit pushing pro-vaccine? Now, we're not anti-vaccine, we just want safe vaccines. There's a difference. Right, okay. Now, our guest is David DuByne, and David's been on the show before last year, and there's an awful lot going on with the weather, as we know. In March, we had the beast from the east. We haven't had something like that since 1982. And then in the summer, well, I enjoyed the summer. I thought the weather was great, but obviously the grass was going very brown, and the farmers were giving out, the crops weren't grown. So we're going to go into more and more extremes of this as time goes on. And David's a good man to speak to you about this. Before we bring David in, Steve's going to read out his bio. Yes, David is the creator of the Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube and Mini Ice Age Conversations podcasts, which discuss societal changes as our Earth enters deeper into the Eddy Grand Solar Minimum, a 400-year cycle in our sun, which will affect everyone on our planet due to the never-ending food prices, rises and economic downturns. While acting as a coffee buyer in Myanmar's central Shan State, David noticed cold weather losses to new plantings, top leaf kill from frost, and bean density decrease from below normal temperatures. With the Grand Solar Minimum intensifying, we need to begin discussions on grain yield decreases, jet stream shifts, cloud cover increases, with heavier wind and rain events which will bankrupt our industries, create food shortages and crush the global economy as food prices triple by 2020 to 2021. With that said, where is your opportunity in these times of danger? Well, there you go. Good evening, David. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on again. This is going to be a great discussion to try to open some minds, really, as to the possibilities and the opportunities in front of you, as well as the danger.
Definitely. Thanks a lot for coming on. Now, you were on our show last year, and but there's so many changes in the weather, the climate change that we're experiencing at the moment. And just before we went live, we were talking about, in Ireland, we had the beast from the east, which obviously affected Europe. And then our summer was quite extreme. And we've had Harry Rhodes on the show, who actually said that if you think that was bad, wait till the winter of 2018-2019. So we're definitely going to a level of extremes. And we've had a number of people on Facebook and sending emails saying, really looking forward to the interview tonight with David to find out what David has to say in his research and what he's found out. Because people are concerned, you know, I mean, really puts, for countries like Ireland and maybe the UK as well and various other countries, the climate is neither too bad or too good. It's kind of in between. It's the Goldilocks, where we can manage a little bit of ice and a little bit of snow and then a few days of sun, and then it's kind of generally just grey in between. But now we're getting to extremes, and we really experienced it in March with that snow, which was pretty bad, the beast from the east. And then the summer, I mean, I enjoyed the weather the summer. It's the first time we had a proper summer. But, you know, I know people start complaining that it was a bit too long. Now, there's reasons for this. So, I don't know, where do you want to kick off, David? Do you want to kind of bring us in and tell us why this is happening and why this is getting more extreme?
I would like to, and I say thank you so much for all of you out there that wanted me to come and talk today. That means a lot to me. I'm very grateful that you find my information so valuable that you're waiting for me to talk. Thank you for that. And also, let's just start with natural cycles first, because going into 400-year cycles in the sun, that's something that's kind of the culmination of everything. But let's start closer to home, and I'm going to say unequivocally your Goldilocks zone is going to be bye-bye from this point forward. It's relegated, and the 60-year cycle on the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, which is basically the Atlantic Ocean water temperatures. Now, regardless if there's a grand solar minimum or not, this 60-year cycle is responsible for the heating or the cooling over Europe, and also the amount of cooler water or warmer water that would be pushed under the Arctic ice cap, and that's in a 9-year cycle. So when I talk about cycles overlapping, here we go. We have two different cycles overlapping on top of each other, where there's a 9-year pulse water cycle. And then from this year forward, you're going to see a lot more ice depth and thickness and gain from this point forward, like we saw this year. You know, it's only the fifth least amount of ice. And they're shocked by why it didn't go to all-time record low ice. Well, the water temperatures from the Atlantic up south of Greenland, that cooler water is being pushed under the ice cap. So you got to think about it. In the 1990s, that water was at least 1.3 to 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than the last pulse. Now, this new pulse here is going to be 1.5 degrees or so Celsius below what it was in the 1990s. So you can expect, since it's cooler water from beneath, the melt from above and beneath is not happening any longer. So it happens at a slower rate, which means more ice will be there. Now, going on to the Atlantic water temperatures, that is set for its cooling phase for the next 30 years. Now, this would cool off Europe anyway. So if you take a look back and you go back into the 1930s, you'll start to see there was a peak in the Atlantic water temperatures, and then we had the Dust Bowl in the United States. We had really high temperatures globally, and then you just map it out every 60 years. Oh, wait, 1990s, that would have been another high. Extreme warm temperatures, just like it was in the 1930s. That is a natural cycle. And here we are going to descend further, and these Atlantic water temperatures are going to continue to decrease. So that means where you are, your Goldilocks zone, you're going to have some brutal winters. And it was expected this year with the Farmer's Almanac and with the lineup of all these natural cycles cooling. And then you have the wild card of this grand solar minimum on top of that only comes around once every 400 years. It lasts for about 15 years, and then it's gone. But what is the chance of that? While the Atlantic's going cold, that we get a grand solar minimum on top of that as well. It's really quirky, but expect cooler conditions across Europe, well, across the entire northern hemisphere. And I'll leave it with that.
Right, okay. So, I mean, a lot of people of a certain age, and we would have remembered when we had extreme snow because March was very similar to 1982 when it was pretty bad. So I suppose if you do the maths, 1982, and then we had 2018. So I don't know, what's that? 30 years, 40 years difference?
You should have worked that out before.
About 38 years, something like that. Anyway,
it's a good while anyway.
38 years, give or take, you know. So obviously that's quite interesting. There's some kind of cycle there. But we, the country just came to a standstill, didn't it, with the snow? A lot of people just weren't used to it, because it was such a memory from 1982. And I suppose at the time in 1982, I was living in Dublin at the time. And although it was bad, we didn't see it as bad as it was being out in the country. And it was so difficult. We were snowed in for about 3 days where we were living. So it was pretty bad. So with the solar minimum happening, how extreme, when you say extreme, are you talking about it's even going to be worse than what we had in March with this beast from the east?
That is my opinion, yes, along with many, many, many others, that you're going to go back to at least the 1970s cooling in this next winter. Because there was more sea ice and it's freezing faster now, that allows more wind patterns to drop further down south. The magnetosphere is weakened even since last year, which allows these jet streams to dip even further. So these polar vortexes, what they're going to be looking for is a new phenomenon, and I am calling it right now. The polar vortex, what you're used to, are those tongues from the Arctic that dip really far south. It was dipping even down into northern Africa and Morocco with the record snow and cold across Algeria. And it even went down into Saudi Arabia with record cold and snow last year, and that last winter you're referring to in the Beast of the East winter. This year, those troughs are going to go lower. They're going to extend further toward the equator, and they're expecting what would be called a break-off, and it would turn into a cold bubble that is going to migrate across into tropical zones, but Arctic air trapped in its little bubble, because the tropospheric temperatures it's going to create its own bubble of cold that'll break off of that polar vortex, and it'll keep going south and just freeze out places that have never been frozen. It'll be kind of like a fizzy bubble that goes off the main vortex there, and it'll spin out, and it's going to have a lot of problems. And the cold is going to continue to amplify. You talked about timelines earlier. This is going to be what is considered the beginning of the amplification this winter that we're going to begin to experience over the next few months. This is it. We're at the cusp of all the changes that are here. Now, I'll say this is very, very solid information. This winter that you experience, the following 2 winters will be at least double or triple as ferocious and fierce with the amount of winds, temperatures, and snow that will accompany. So you'll get a very good gauge of what the future weather will be like for whatever region you're in across the planet. It just does not have to be where you're at or where I'm at.
Okay.
Whatever the winters will be like, expect more amplification on that in terms of cold, wind, power outages, and everything.
Okay, let me talk to you about this polar vortex. I'm going to kind of refer to Hollywood, and you know what, Hollywood exaggerates things. But the movie The Day After Tomorrow, they talked about, in that movie, they talked about polar vortex. And even through, they've dug up mammoths where they've actually said there must have been an instant freeze where the food was still in their stomach. They hadn't digested it. Now, I know when we've seen extreme weather, I think last year there was people on video, and it was like minus 35 in certain parts of the States. It came down from the Arctic, and people were opening the window, and it was just like, severe cold. You could see it coming in. But this polar vortex that you're talking about, how low are we going to go temperature-wise? What would you be talking about?
Well, the same as last year, minus 5°C probably. Something 3 to 5°C cooler than the lowest temperatures. So what I would say equivalent is all the record cold temperatures that were set last year, they're going to be broken again this year in those same exact spots, because it seems that it's just a cycle. And when you look back through history, you can find where some areas on the planet, specifically France, central France and Germany, that area is always the first to cool in these cycles. And, you can just trace it back in history. And if I could add one thing about what you talked about with the mammoths here. Now, the polar vortex, that's just cold air on our planet's surface. Mm-hmm. what apparently had happened to the mammoths was there was an area, a hole that opened up from the troposphere in our upper atmosphere and drove down that extreme cold straight to our planet. So it was almost like a space cold air tornado, if you will, coming down and touching our planet in certain areas, because it had to be about 180 below zero or something to freeze those mammoths at that point. And just on Earth, we just don't get to that temperature, not even down in Antarctica in the middle of the winter. So it had to have been a space weather event that caused that to happen. So they're quite different in the ferocity and how cold it really got. Because mammoths, you know, they're used to living in 0 or below 0. You ever see those woolly coats on them, the thickness of their skin? They're built for that. Elk are too. And last year, I don't know if it was a cold plasma event. Sorry, 2 years ago. It was a cold plasma event or what happened, but full-on herd of 30 elk just got frozen solid, just like the mammoths in an instant. So what happened there? Was that another tropospheric anomaly where that tropospheric temperatures and actual really cold space temperatures drop to our Earth in sort of a tornado fashion, and they're trying not to tell people because they don't want to spook people with cold plasma events reaching our Earth's surface? That is a spooky thing to think about. That
is spooky. I'd like to know, Trivia Pursuit question, what is the coldest Ireland has ever been recorded? Not the wind chill factor, but actually just from a cold point of view. I'd like to know, if anybody knows or anybody can Google that, what was the lowest recorded temperature in Ireland that's ever been recorded? That would be interesting to find out, because we might be going down that road. I know if it gets really cold, I know when it's cold, because Steve will put on another T-shirt.
I love T-shirts. It says here, just to answer your question, the lowest temperature was minus 19.1 degrees, and that was in January 16th of January 1881.
Minus 19. What do you think of that, David? Do you think we're going to go lower than that now?
Maybe not this year, but probably by 2023 or 2024, I would put my reputation out to say yes.
Okay. Now, with these extremes with the winter and what we're going to experience, does that flip for the summer?
It does, and you've already started to see that. I've been terming it the equatorial vortex versus the polar vortex, coming from two different latitudes on the planet here. So it's the exact same phenomenon, just happening in reverse from where the air streams or when the jet streams are originating from. So we've seen some amazing cold in the wintertime where that Arctic air went all the way down to Florida, went down to Cuba last year, and it went way down into North Africa. Well, we're starting to see the same thing where this equatorial vortex is pushing that really warm air with those same vortices, but really far up to Norway like we saw this year. And it seems to be extremes in both. It seems that these vortices are able to push much further out of their normal ranges, because when our atmosphere is locked in place, when the magnetosphere is nice and strong because our sun's magnetic field is nice and strong and it's connected with our Earth's magnetic field, these two bodies in space are connected electromagnetically. We're not just revolving around by our own just a little ball in space, then our magnetic field just spins off into nothingness. No. This thing is connected to the sun. So whatever happens on the sun affects our Earth. Now our magnetosphere, that is what locks our atmosphere in. And when it's nice and tight, like it was in the 1990s, those jet streams stayed in their exact same positions. There was very little difference in how far north or south they went out of their traditional flow. But since we are getting into a very weak magnetosphere, these jet streams are able to flow wherever they want. And you're really seeing the amplification of, I don't even know, are these things going to blaze down to something like 20 degrees north latitude or even further, 15 degrees north latitude when it gets to the apex of this cooling? That I am not sure of. But they talked about the Everglades. This is for American audience, and the Everglades in America. This is southern Florida down near Miami. Froze every winter for 8 winters straight, and the Native American Seminole Indians called it the Great White Rain because it snowed in southern Florida every year, and the Everglades had a glaze of ice on them where they were able to walk over the Everglades covered by ice. This is accounts of the Native American Indians, Seminoles, in 1600s.
Wow. I will say, obviously, we know there's a change going on, and we're seeing it here in Ireland because we're experiencing weather patterns that we haven't experienced before. And we've had Hurricane Ophelia, and we just had Hurricane Florence, and we were down last week. I was down for 2 days. Steve was as well. with power, and we are experiencing weather patterns. Now, we have heard there's people talk about the pole shift, and the pole shift is happening, and we know the magnetic poles are changing because the airports are changing their runways because of the magnetic poles are changing, but there is a physical shift happening as well. Now, one of the books that I read, a book called The Only Planet of Choice, I've mentioned it on the show before, and they talk about obviously the Earth being our kilter by about 23.5 degrees, and that pole shift is about moving it back to 0 degrees. And when that happens, apparently we're going to have a global temperate climate. But obviously that shift has to take place, and that's happening now, so we've been told. But it's going to take time, and that's why we're seeing a lot of changes. Maybe tectonic plate movements as well are happening, and because recently, the other day, didn't they have a tsunami down in some place in Indonesia, and there was 800 people killed?
Yeah, that's right. And I do want to come out and say to the Indonesian people, I hope you're safe down there. And there should have been the warning from the United States Geological Service. The USGS downgraded that quake and did not put out a tsunami alert. That is criminal. That should have been put out. Even the local earthquake service in Indonesia canceled the tsunami warning after they saw just a 1.5 meter wave. Well, that was the first wave that came in, and then the tsunami took a little bit longer to generate. And by the time the second and third waves came in, they'd already canceled the alert. That is, I don't know what went on during that time, but they downgraded the quake because they didn't want it to register as a 7.7, and they were so instant and so adamant about canceling the tsunami warning that they let all those people still back out onto the beaches or out onto the coastal areas to clean up, and I cannot believe that happened in this day and age. They set out a full tsunami Pacific alert system all the way after, remember after the Thailand back in, was it 2004 on Christmas Day, never again, and they set out all those buoys and put in billions of dollars to upgrade the system to warn against these things, and then how could they malfunction on that and not put out the tsunami warnings during that time? In my personal opinion, the USGS and global monitoring systems for earthquakes are an all-out effort to downgrade these quakes so you don't see the uptick in large quakes, because that is one of the things that goes with this grand solar minimum is more tectonic activity, more volcanic activity, and larger earthquakes. And there's a lot of people talking about the correlation between what's happening with the uptick in the quakes and the uptick in the volcanoes across the planet. Yet with the numerals and the numbers that are put there for the quakes, it seems that they're downgrading on purpose so you don't see the linear trend up. Because to downgrade a quake by 0.6, that's crazy when it was a 7.7 and they want to put it down to 6.9. Then they had all these aftershocks of like 6.7, 7.1, 6.8, and they're all downgraded into 5.9 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Really, I just don't get it, but there's something they're trying to hide.
Yeah, well, there is something. I think there is, because they've been caught out a few times doing that. Now, a few weeks ago, I actually jumped onto a website I use for monitoring weather, global weather, and in that week, it was only about three weeks ago, I think, I was just showing my son at the time, and there was 7 large tropical storms globally. And I'd never seen that before. 7 of them. I couldn't believe it. And there's obviously something going on to affect it that much. Maybe it's part of the pole shift. I don't know. But we were having extreme flooding, extreme weather patterns, extreme conditions. So we have to get ready for this. And later on in the show, we're going to be talking about solutions and what we can do to prepare and get ready. Because if we're going to, for the next 15 years, and 10 to 15 years, if this is going to get to extremes, both hot and cold, we need to get prepared, we need to get ready, because everybody experienced the beast from the east, and I don't know anybody that actually liked it. Okay, for the first, the snow, the kids like the snow, but when you can't get out to go to the local shop to get food and your stocks are running low, that's when you realise, I think that was for me, I don't know about you, Steve, that's when we realised how important it is to be prepped, to get ready and have a prep.
Absolutely, because when that happened, even in our village, where a local shop is, it would normally take, if you were to walk to it, you could walk to it in 5 minutes. And after that downpour of the snow, after day 2, like our stocks were starting to run a little bit low, and we also wanted to go around and check on the in-laws as well. So a 5-minute, which would normally be a 5-minute trek to the shop, took about 30 minutes, which was ridiculous, because you're going into the snow and your leg muscles are getting tired and all this carry on. But I mean, if that's going to happen again and worse, we need to get prepared, and people need to know this information.
Definitely, and that's why we need, David, this is great information that we can let our listeners know to get prepared, especially if we're in Ireland and the UK and Europe as well. Now, the whole idea, we did mention before the show about the Carrington Effect. For people who don't know, the Carrington Effect is something that happened in 1859, where it was a coronal mass ejection and had a massive effect on the planet, and it blew out all the telegraph poles. Now, because we didn't have electronics, it didn't matter. A couple of people got electrocuted, all right, because of there was basic electricity there. But it wasn't a major issue because people were self-sufficient at that time in 1859. However, this day and age, I mean, we were down for 2 days, and just for 2 days last week, and we were going, okay, we got a lot of things done, but we just imagined that was a week. So what's the possibility? Now, we did hear that there was a near miss in 2012 regarding a CME. What's the possibility of something like that happening? Because I'll tell you why, David. Somebody else said that the Ring of Fire, which is the Pacific, there was something like 77 volcanoes gone off all at the same time. And some people believe, I don't know how true this is, that will actually cause a magnetic pulse effect from the volcanoes and actually have an effect on the sun, which might cause something like a CME or something similar. What's your thoughts on that?
Personally, I think it would be the opposite. The sun would affect the Earth first to cause that. Now, it could be a static discharge released in the atmosphere if there was enough ash up there. But for us to affect the sun, usually it's the opposite way around, because the sun's about 1.2 million times larger than our Earth. Although it is known, though, with our iron core as we go around, it seems that when we get in front of some of these sunspots, that they just seem to dissipate. Now, could that be something? Obviously, they're looking into it. There's a lot of study going on to see what effect our Earth has passing in front of sunspots that magically make them disappear. Now, is that a protective type of a thing? Will that have less of an effect of dissipating sunspots as our magnetosphere weakens along with the sun's magnetic field? Those are to be knowns. But just to come at it from the non-fear factor, I want to set, just of those of you listening that you were talking about the pole shift there, it's called polar wander. Now, it's not a full-on shift happening at the moment. It's a wander, which means that the magnetic North Pole is moving around. Now, it's been moving around since the 1600s that they've been categorizing it and following its movement. It'll clip off one direction for 250 miles, and it'll pull back another direction 200 miles, and it'll zip somewhere else 300 miles. This time it's continued to go in its direction toward Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia, and it's continuing to speed up at around 45 miles per year. Now, you need to think about that, because 1 degree latitude is 60 miles. So even if you're talking, let's talk about where you're at up there, where the cold is. If I go down somewhere into Spain, that difference in how many miles north or south is, that is a gargantuan difference in the climate that you're getting. So think about that. If the pole's been moving for 5, 6, 7 years now in that same direction, and we're something like 300 miles or 350 miles difference from what it was, think about your own local climates wherever you are. And if you go 350 miles further south or further north, how different the climate would be. And, this could all be part of it, why the animals are having a difficult time migrating around. And they're, 350 miles that direction, it was open ocean, and then suddenly they're running onto a peninsula. You just have to think about some of these magnetic changes. And, I'm going to use 350 to 400 miles as my baseline, because that's how much the pole has moved toward Kamchatka Peninsula. And that would be, 5, 6 degrees of latitude more, 8 degrees of latitude, something in there. That is a lot of movement.
Okay. Do you believe that we are experiencing an Earth wobble, which is they call the Chandler effect? Do you believe that's happening?
Well, I know somebody does, because I'm reading this new article that I was going to do a video on later today or tomorrow from the Scientific American. I'll read you the article. It says, humans contribute to Earth's wobble, scientists say. Now, they're talking about the droughts, the melting ice, all these types of things, and they're saying, get it. Humans are responsible. Since 1899, Earth's axis of spin has shifted 34 feet due to melting sea ice And they're blaming it right on us, particularly in Greenland. But I'm like, wait a second. Greenland had all-time record ice gain this year and last year. That's off the Danish Meteorological Institute. That's some of the slides I sent you there on the Greenland ice growth. So again, they're still putting out this whole everything's melting. But in contrary to what's really happening in the data, Greenland is the second year in a row of all-time record ice gain. The Arctic is recovering in its ice. And they're still talking about melting ice, which makes no sense. And even the Antarctic ice around there is right back to the 1981 to 2010 baseline.
Well, it's all about money, David. The carbon footprint means they can tax us more.
Well, I don't agree with that, and I don't behold that. I'm not beholden to any of these people that consider themselves above us. They're another human being, and they try to tax us, but I don't accept that authority. I just don't. And if everybody on the planet said, I don't accept it, we're done with this, I'd just go back, none of us accept it, it would instantly stop. But nobody really comes out and says, I don't agree, I will not accept this in any way, shape, or form. I will actually oppose this. I'm done with it. And it's like that with everything. You were talking about governmental influences and what's going on with corrupt government. If everybody took a stand and said this stops now, it would instantly stop. And we look through history. Every time people say stop it, it stops. And that's just been since human history, basically, whether it be the burning of the witches in the witch trials, or whether it be something with segregation or apartheid or whatever it is. There's a million examples. When we say stop, it stops. And this should be one of those things also. No more global taxes, no more talking about it. We need to start talking about what is going to happen when we get into this much more heavy, intense cycle that's going to affect our global crop output. Instead of dibbling with CO2 taxes where all their scientific information is not even correct anymore. It goes completely against global warming, everything that's coming out now.
But don't you just love the way they fly around in the private jets telling us to switch off our toilet light because to save energy? That's what I have to laugh. They're flying around in the private jets and the airlines telling us to switch off our toilet light to save energy. Yes, hypocrisy, I think, at its best. Now, tell us something. Are you familiar with Haarp Technology? I.e., do you know about it and know, that it's been used to manipulate and control the weather?
Yes, and I had a great interview with, if you go to climateviewer.com with Jim Lee, he puts out that site. Amazing. He, I think, is the number one person on the planet to talk to about this issue. I know what it is. I know they can bend the ionosphere with it due to heating. I know what they're putting up there with the nanoparticulates in the atmosphere that are metal-based with the aluminum, the barium, the strontium. Can they affect the weather patterns to the point where you're talking about, or a lot of people are into that realm that they can bend the weather across the entire Earth? I think part of it's cosmic radiation management. Some of it's for the weather control, the owning the weather 2020 with the U.S. government's military. You got to think about it. That nano metal that they're putting up there, when these cosmic rays come in and they hit a piece of that nano metal, literally that ray strikes that nanoparticulate, it loses its charge. So it has nothing to start to create new cloud cover. So what is it? Do they need this now to stop the bombardment of galactic cosmic rays and cosmic rays from our sun because of the changes that are happening? Is it a protective thing where they really need to do it? If they stop, it's going to be such runaway climate change, not due to CO2, but literally because of cosmic ray bombardment, that we'll get into something like a day after tomorrow scenario. I'm not really sure, but that program is absolutely in play. Even now they're coming out talking about it publicly. So if you don't know it, it's definitely out there for sure. And then it's in the public realm now. They're even saying, we did it without your approval and there's nothing you can do to stop us.
Yeah. And it's, we refer to it as geoengineering. Now, I don't know about you, Steve, but the last few days up to Saturday, the skies were quite clear. And I thought, okay, that's looking promising. And then Saturday, they were just working bloody overtime. And the skies were full of it. Did you see it on Saturday?
I have to say, yeah, I did notice that the skies were clear. I wasn't really paying too much attention on Saturday. I did see a couple of chemtrails, but I would generally follow Terry Lawton. Terry Lawton is on Facebook, and he's in Wexford, and he's my chemtrail guy, if you like. He's wherever they are, he goes out and he does the videos, and he's doing great work exposing what's going on in the geoengineering department. So and I mean, he had a video up there it was over the weekend. It may have been Saturday, don't know, Alan, but he did have a video up there with a lot of spraying going on.
Unbelievable. And and the fact that it might be harming us and giving people more gallons and various nanoparticulates, and we're taking it in, plus the pH soil balance has gone down. There's a lot of been complaints about that the quality of the soil has gone down. So it's affecting the populations globally with this chemtrail spraying. Now, if they are spraying it to try and prevent the solar energy, the sun, that's coming in, and trying to reduce the effect that's happening on the planet, then, maybe they should just come out and tell us that this is what they're doing instead of keeping it hidden. Just mention as well that Joan gave a link there earlier, which I'm going to post up again on both of the chat rooms. It's a link for a video, and it says chemtrails are an aerosol research FUNVAX, FUNVAX, and VMAT2 gene. It's supposed to be a very interesting video, so we're going to pop that in the chat room there for anyone to check it out. So with the weather conditions the way they are, David, and obviously they have Haarp Technology, do you think that what they've been experimenting with using Haarp has made things worse and maybe caused the problem?
Well, it's never a good thing to start messing with our atmosphere. I mean, even when they did the first experiments back in the 60s, you start to bend things, and it takes weeks or even months to come back into place with the heating. You're creating artificial heat islands up in our lower troposphere or stratosphere. I mean, what's that doing with that? And then what if that 2-week return period before it normalized pushed something else, and then that pushed something else, and there were all of these knock-on effects, and now they're just trying to mitigate knock-on effects. It's really hard to tell what's going on with that. But I wanted to answer your question. Why would they not tell the people what's going on? Why would they not tell them, hey, we got to keep spraying or else the cosmic rays are going to have us once in a 1,000-year flood every week? These massive blizzards are going to freeze you and you're out of your homes, where you're not going to be able to even stay in your homes in Canada and other places north in the northern hemisphere. Global panic. They want to keep the banking system continued. And you alluded to it, it's one set of rules for the ultra elite, and there's one set of rules for, the regular people out on the ground here. The regular people on the ground are keeping the banking system floating. You're on the credit cards, you're on this, that, and the other. But imagine if you set in a global panic if everybody was running to the stores to buy everything. First, people will quit working. Secondly, they'd pull all their money out of the banks, and fractional reserving, they would have to pull back on those loans too, and the credit system would collapse in a matter of weeks or less. And it would be a game changer. There'd be fights in the stores for the last shovel. The just-in-time delivery system would break down because it revolves on credit. So all the resupply coming in to even something so simple like a Home Depot or whatever it is, these larger stores that sell home and garden equipment, those stores would run out just because the whole credit system would lock up. I think they're trying to truly prevent global panic, because I know that's how most people would act, is if they heard the end is nigh and you really heard it was coming, and all the authorities were going, all right, well, you really got to get ready for this thing. I mean, who's going to go to work tomorrow?
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And it makes sense. Right, David, we're going to go over. We have loads of questions coming in, so we're going to get cracking and get the questions over to you. Steve.
Okay, I'll start off with the last question first and work my way back. Peter says, question, I've heard from several people that the colour of the sun as viewed with our eyes has changed. Now it is more of a white colour. Is this true?
Yes, it is. It's true. It's from the UV output of the sun is changing. You'll notice that the watts per square meter striking our planet has dropped one. It was like usually 1361, but now it's been confirmed it dropped to 1360. This takes us back into something like the Maunder minimum, getting in there. And yes, the color spectrum has changed. And if you notice John Casey's book, his very first one, Cold Sun, he has a blue sun on the cover of his book. And it just makes you wonder what he knew about the spectrum color changes. Are we going to see a different colored sun? Because it went from the yellow, very soft that we knew as kids, and now it's bright white. And man, it burns your skin. That's going to bite you like a dog out there with rabies. That'll just bite your skin. But it's definitely white, and you notice it. And they're also talking about it becoming more intense with the UV, damaging plants, damaging DNA, and they just don't know. Is it going to turn another color? And will it be noticeable? And how will that spook people on the planet? Imagine if the sun starts to turn green or blue. Oh my gosh, people are absolutely going to think it's the end of the world, and they won't know it's a cycle. They're just going to think it's the end, and it's not. It's just a cycle. But if the color changes off that white into a different color, you're going to see everything just literally unravel in front of your eyes.
Well, just while we're talking about the sun, we both Alan and I, we have you know welding glass. We have some of that, and so every now and again we'll kind of take a look up at the sun with the welding glass, because obviously you can't stare at it otherwise, or it would kill you. But I noticed the sun the other day, and yes, it definitely wasn't orange. Now I have some mornings I do go to work and I do see an orange ball in the sky, but by kind of when it reaches its peak, it is white. And recently I did look up at the sun with the welding glass, and even through the welding glass, it didn't look like a sun. It looked like a white. It did look like a white kind of light in the sky. But we've also heard as well, David, and I don't know if kind of this is it's kind of going a little off topic, but it may be something that you may be aware of. I'm not sure. But we've had reports as well that there are supposed to be other planets coming in, and they're supposed to be visible beside the sun, and if you look up at certain times and have certain technology, that you can see these other planets. And some people speculate that that's why a lot of these spraying operations are also going on, because they don't want the general public seeing these other planets up beside the sun, in case they may think that it's again like another apocalypse or something.
Yeah, when you think about, I understand with the telescopes, that's the infrared telescope if you want to see any of these brown dwarf stars. I have been looking to try to either find if it's true or find if it's false. And I looked through a lot of information on that side. And personally, I just haven't seen anything that would say, yes, that's 100% that it's true up there. I really like to look through some of those, people have the cams. It might be a sunset cam from this part of the planet, or a moonset cam from there's cams everywhere you can get on, live streaming cams. And you see a lot of bizarre footage coming through there. But I just can't say yay or nay on the body. If it was here, I think the magnetic effects would be far greater. And if it was really that close in the inner solar system, like, you'd be able to see it with your naked eye, regardless if it's brown dwarf and it's invisible further, out where you'd need an IR telescope to see it. But if it was really that close, I think we would see it. And also that last eclipse that came by in the United States, it was total darkness, and there was telescopes all over the place and backyard astronomers, and everybody was looking for that particular celestial body, along with, the great images when you get a full eclipse. But nothing was spotted up there. And that was like, if it's really that close and it's really right in, having these huge giant effects, you think it would be visible. At least somebody would have captured it somewhere during that eclipse, but nothing. I was really shocked that I didn't even see anything, and I'm still really on the fence about that one. Right now I'm going to say I don't have enough proof to say that extra body's up there, because I just haven't found it.
What about observatories being closed down? We've also heard that some recent observatories have actually been closed down for some reason. And the Vatican, why is the Vatican? What's their interest in space? Are they looking for God?
They're looking for the same thing with their infrared telescope named Lucifer. Now, what is the deal with that? The Vatican names their telescope looking for Planet X or Nibiru or whatever you like to call it. They call it Lucifer Telescope? Are you kidding me? That is how would you even think? That's impossible. I mean, and that's the solar observatory you're talking about, the one they closed down in New Mexico. It's called the Solar Observatory, literally, because they view the sun. There were a few other live feeds that were cut during that time. There were 6 or 7 other live stream observatories on the sun that were cut. But like the SDO stayed up, and SOHO stayed up, and a whole bunch of other, online resources, although they were all from NASA. So you start to pick and put it in and say, well, NASA left all their feeds up, yet all the independent telescopes went down. So where is that? You start to get into this gray area of, the naysayers will say, well, look at all the other stuff. It stayed up. There's tons of information about the sun. There's a plethora of live feeds that still stayed up, and they only took down these 6 or 7 observatories with live feeds from private observatories. So I don't know where it goes with that, but something is definitely, and I'm saying the media distraction too. They don't want to know the full fact or the full, the brunt of what's about to hit us. And I don't know why they want to keep everybody so unprepared. And this is why I do my channel, because I want you to be prepared. We need to start talking about the solutions so we can have prosperous lives as we move through, because I sure don't want to be living on a bowl of gruel, freezing my butt off in a frozen house that I have to burn 2 toothpicks worth of wood per day to stay warm, and that's my ration. I don't exist in that world, and I don't want you to exist in that world either. I want you to know what's happening, understand the changes, figure out the solutions, and then offer value so people make sure you're well taken care of during this time. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about safety, food, shelter, heat, warmth, medicine, and all these other things that might not be available as a just-in-time delivery system crashes with these economic woes in front of us.
Yeah, we have to be prepared. Just before you go to the next question there, we normally have heard about NASA being never a straight answer, but the other one I heard during the week was not a space agency, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. But, I mean, even the likes of that about NASA, their feeds are up, but other feeds are cut. I mean, that always reminds me... it always reminds me of that film. You remember the film? I think was it Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock? I think it was Keanu Reeves. I'm not sure about. There's a bomb on the bus, and your man does some wizardry with the camera on the bus. So the live feed, it looks like it's a live feed, but it's not really a live feed. Do we know the film? No. Okay. Does anyone know the film I'm talking about?
Keanu Reeves.
It was called Speed, I think the name of it was.
Oh, the one where he has to keep it at a certain speed or
that's
else it'll blow up.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, yeah. Okay.
So I'm not going mad.
No. Oh.
NASA calling. NASA calling.
Sorry, there's no pizzas tonight. We're closed.
Okay, yeah, sorry, the pizza oven is off. Anyway, okay, we'll continue on with the questions. Joan said a few moments ago she heard in World War II that they were going to use weather control technology to create tsunamis to use against people, but decided bombs were more efficient. She's wondering, is that true, David? Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, and I've read some scary reports about them putting nukes, and they've mapped out all of the canyons across the ocean's bottom because they figured out where they would detonate the device, which size of wave it would cause. And they've already mapped it out, and they've already done a bunch of model runs on where it would be and how much destruction it would cause. And yes, that is a true fact. And that was done late 1980s, at least in the preliminary, and then they did the updates on the reports, and you can get some of the newest stuff. And I don't like what they've actually been talking about is using that as a weapon to destroy, because you know how bad the water it hits everything. There's no enemy that it doesn't strike. I mean, that tidal wave doesn't know friend or foe. It just goes.
Yeah, no, I don't
approve of that. I don't approve of that. And you know what I don't approve of either is in this day and age that we're still talking about warfare, that we're still talking about wars and bombing people at 2018 going into 2019. Are you kidding me? That is an archaic system that needs to just be removed from this planet. We should be so far beyond that. We should be at the point where you can talk things out, work things out. We should not be still at the point where we're dropping bombs on people at all. Because it doesn't matter. You see how much blue fire they get or errant strikes that take people out. All for what? It's to continue the dollar presence on the planet, or continue an old fossil fuel system that's no longer needed because we have magnetic motors and free energy and Tesla devices, and we just don't need it anymore. And I'm really hoping the vibrational frequency of the sun bumps it up enough, and I think that's what we're seeing, this decay of the old systems that can't hold together in this higher light frequency. Because what has held us down for these last 400, 500, 600 years is this darkest, heavy iron energy. And I really, all these systems you're talking about, when you alluded to talking about the banks in the beginning, the central banks, they are going to be historical relics, I do believe, in the very near future, because this light frequency that's changing along with our sun, the literal frequency of us and our ethereal beings is changing. Our frequency is changing. And I hope it sweeps through the planet enough where all of these archaic rulership top-down systems decay along with it, and they can no longer hang on in the light that we're coming into.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of changes going on. We have done a number of shows on different subjects talking about the changes that are taking place, good and bad, affecting people, especially with the banking system and everything else. But for tonight, we'll focus on the weather and the climate change. Steve, you got more questions there for David?
We do. Ray was just gave us some information earlier. He said the temperature dropped. This is quite interesting. He said the temperature dropped to 252 below zero, and that froze the mammoths. He said he's seen a study. Bird's eye technicians were asked if they could reproduce that temperature with their refrigeration expertise, and they said it was impossible because there was no equipment on Earth that could freeze that low, and the time taken to freeze a mammoth, it would have having to have been done in about 2 to 3 seconds.
Wow,
that's quite interesting. Isn't
it? Incredible.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said 180 below zero, and it was 250. I remember that Bird's Eye. I had seen that article a while back as well, and he's correct.
So that means it would have happened that quick. Is that
Yes.
is that even possible for it to freeze that quick?
If it's pulled from space. Now, those temperatures you're talking about that we're talking about, you got to put on the gloves and hat because it's cold outside, those are from our terrestrial system within our own encapsulated Earth's atmosphere. What was done with those mammoths is there was a break somewhere in our Earth's atmosphere where that cold air from space literally poured down and touched our planet. There was a vortex from space that pulled the space air, if you will, not air, but the space temperatures, cold plasma event or something like this. Now, how terrifying would that be if it starts to happen across the planet in just random places at any time, even in deserts? You're going to have a very difficult time keeping the global populace under control at that point. I think they're doing all the divide and conquer in the media to keep us distracted so we don't look at the food price rises and we don't look at these weather anomalies.
Yeah, that is absolutely frightening stuff. What about, they do have the other technology which is on the cards and it's going to be making an appearance if it hasn't done so already, David. And I don't know how well you are up on 5G, because from what we've been hearing recently on 5G, if you want to control the planet, 5G seems to be the way to go. There's already a lot of information out there saying that it can be used as an energy weapon, and you could basically ramp up the power in any given area or state or country and fry everyone to a crisper in a couple of seconds. Have you heard about that one?
I do, and I take a little bit different take on the 5G. So with the vibrational frequency of the sun changing and we're getting into more of an enlightened state with just the average person on the planet, they're going to have to try to curtail that because these powers that be want to entrench their power structure and they never want to let that go. So imagine 5G being unveiled as a form of, hey, it's going to give better internet, it's going to give better phone service. But in reality, it's there to try to pinch the vibrational frequency down into that lower frequency where they can still survive and they can control the frequency on the planet better and literally try to change the natural sweep of things through our universe. Then we start getting into some very strange things with AI and all this kind of, what if it's a control device to take your frequency back so you still stay stuck in things that you would naturally vibrate out of? I think that's where the 5G is taking us. They're really trying to mitigate this free will release of the human spirit on the planet during these changes in our sun.
Yeah, and there are energy changes taking place, which we've talked about. And obviously the whole idea is to keep the population down. And by implementing systems like 5G and other things like that, it's all about, control and keeping our energy down, because everything's energy at the end of the day. Just going back to what you're talking about the freezing side, liquid nitrogen, how cold is that? You mentioned 252.
Now that's 252 below. I don't know if that's Fahrenheit or centigrade.
Oh, I don't know what the temperature of liquid nitrogen is. That'd be
I'd say it's very cold.
Yeah, because if they're saying that they can't produce 252, but they can produce liquid nitrogen, well, that freezes things quite quickly as well. That was just thinking that. Anyway, so you have more questions there.
We'll get on to our team of scientists here at the OYM laboratory.
We have 195 degrees Celsius below zero. I just Googled it while you were on there. 77 Kelvin or minus 320 Fahrenheit. So that's where we're getting at. It's actually the boiling point is 195, so it has to be a little cooler than that to keep it below the boiling point because then it'll start to evaporate.
But we're
kind of around 200 C below zero.
So if you got hit by liquid nitrogen at 195, then you'd freeze quite,
literally in your tracks.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, but question from Seamus, and Seamus says, can you ask David to expand on indoor growing and LED lights, which are best sources in Europe? For example, he says, in relation to temperatures dropping in northern climes and impending danger to glass greenhouses from large size hailstones. Can you mention? I don't know if that's not part of the question. We'll get to that later. Yeah, but anyway, LED lights and indoor growing, David.
I believe that'll be part of the solution. And again, when we know what the problem is, we're done kind of talking about the problem. We know what it was or is coming, and it's going to hit us full force. I don't know why the governments are keeping us unprepared, but they are. So you're kind of off on your own for the solutions, and understand that there's going to be no cavalry blazing with it, horses riding in to save you during this time. You are absolutely going to be on your own. In my personal opinion, there's going to be breakdowns of services left, right, and center. Now, if you're able to, like you guys have some solar panels out there, you can still drive an LED system inside your house to grow vegetables or microgreens or sprouts in winter conditions inside your home, because it'll still be warm enough to do that, but they'll need a light source. Now, LED lights are the best way to go. And I know Brad over at Hidden Harvest, who's developed an all-in-one LED. It's like a 1 square foot by 1 square foot, and it encompasses all the nanometers to grow any type of vegetable that you need. It's an all-in-one light. It's a bit of yellow and white bulbs on there with the LED that help create this. But you're going to have to start learning how to grow some things indoor and out. Regardless of where you live on this planet, we're going to have to take more of a pioneering approach, or an approach that our grandparents had, where all of us are going to have to learn how to grow something during the summers to supplement our foods during the winters. Now, if you can't do that, you're going to have to think of another solution to that in itself, which would be growing indoors. I mean, how many people have an extra closet, or they could clean out a closet and have something that small? It would still provide you enough vegetables to have fresh vegetables all week long, provided you can get the seed. Now, this is the whole crux there. Again, is there going to be a steady seed supply to be able to do this, to grow microgreens and sprouts? Or how are seeds might be a very valuable commodity to be trading in the future, because if the seed supply breaks down, you're going to have to grow that up until it flowers and then comes to seeds again itself, and then save those seeds. So, learning how to grow indoor, you should start tinkering with it, playing with it, even if it's 1 or 2 indoor grow trays under a table somewhere, just to start practicing. Because it's all about the humidity and the airflow and how close you need those lights and how often you need to move them up as the plants are growing. The best time to harvest so you're not wasting much. There's a whole, I think indoor vertical farming is going to be the good thing. And also with all these defunct malls, shopping malls around the planet that seem to be, especially in the United States, there's a lot of stuff out of business over here. Why not take those and turn them into large grow centers, employment, and you could have a more centralized facility which would produce better results than everybody doing it by themselves.
I think people are playing around with quadroponics, is it? Hydroponics.
Yeah. And aeroponics, both.
Yeah. Now, we know about LED lights, and people talk about the dangers of LED lights as well, and we should be using incandescent light bulbs, the old light bulbs. But LEDs, they're kind of a double-edged sword. Yes, they are dangerous for you, but at the end of the day, they're low energy and they save you money, and there are benefits to using them. So there's an argument there, a bit like Wi-Fi, I suppose. But we don't want to get down into the LED dangers of LED lights, because we want to focus on the climate change. But Steve, you've got an interesting email there from one of our listeners.
Yeah, this is a continue on from the question that Seamus asked. He said, can you mention, this is in Irish, so I'm going to do my best, and I am Irish, but I'll do my best to pronounce it. He says, can you mention Na T Gloin? Just minutes from my home in Falcarra. There's a web address here. I'll put it up on the chat. He says, as an example of a community grow up that needs to prepare big time for the GSM as the GSM intensifies. Na T Gloin is revamped to grow indoors under LED. Could provide enough food for whole communities around, including hotels and restaurants. Well, that's quite interesting, because there's a lot of community schemes, and we only heard about this a couple of weeks back, even in my own area. There are community schemes and community gardens that have been set up. Unfortunately, a lot of these are outdoors. But I mean, if that's something that we could do, I mean, when we don't know what's falling on top of us from the sky. We don't know what's being sprayed. We have ideas, but there's no one saying, okay, here we go. That's exactly what you're getting hit with. So we don't know. So outdoor gardens, yes, you can grow, but you could be doing damage to yourself. LED lights, I hadn't heard of this before. Could it be a way forward? Could it be something that we could use and everyone could use? If it is, I mean, then I think it's a step in the right direction. But I mean, do the benefits outweigh the risks? The risks, I mean, if nothing is growing around, and as you say, David, if you can find the seeds and you can provide food for your family and nourishment, there's a lot to be said for that, I suppose.
Yeah, and you have to take that into consideration. I mean, are you going to starve, or are you going to use an LED light? You're really going to boil down to something like this. And, think domes, just as you're referring to the community there, I think I received the same email. I have a lot of stuff on my plate here, and I'm traveling through this weeks. And think about domes, because that's what would resist, the hail damage and also the heavier winds that will be accompanying. So what we saw last year, and, with the Beast from the East and the Super Freeze 2.0, you had those two storms. During those same times, those Almeria greenhouse down in Spain were frozen out, bashed out with the hail, and ripped up from the wind. You know, I mean, that's a major vegetable growing area that you had shortages all through, you know, up in everywhere in Northern Europe, UK, Ireland, whatever. There's shortages everywhere from just the basic vegetables because the other places where they were growing it were bashed to smithereens by hail and wind. And you saw last year the prices of what the zucchini squashes, and you couldn't get basil, and there were all kind of other things you couldn't get, lettuces and whatever. And there's some stuff was just not available or was double, triple price just because of the inavailability. So if you're able to grow your own, then who cares? But there is going to be a lot of trade-offs going forward. I mean, the environment's going to take a very, very, very back seat to survival. I mean, if you're going to starve to death or your family's going to starve or you're going to use a non-eco-friendly product, I guarantee you're going to use the non-eco-friendly product to stay alive. And that's just the way it's going to be. So, you know, like I said, there's going to be a lot of psychological changes moving forward of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. You know, right now we're living in a very static, very sterile society where there's a bunch of rules and norms to adhere to because everything works fine. But as soon as things don't work fine, people are going to find solutions to the problems that they need to solve around their homes first. And if it involves using oil instead of a, you know, breakaway orange-based organic detergent, I guarantee they're going to go and use the oil because it's going to save their life. So you got to think about, domes, and that was my point. Go domes, D-O-M-E-S, domes.
That's okay.
Dome builders.
Just a reminder for people that it's 7 days before cannibalism kicks in. So just a reminder. Steve, we have more questions because we want to focus on the solutions. So we'll try and get through the questions and then we'll talk about the solutions.
We do. There's a lot of information popping in up on the chat rooms there in relation to the effects and dangers of LED. Well, we haven't quite looked at that in depth at the moment, so we can't really comment too much. But someone said, okay, we know aspartame is bad, or we know sugar is you know, if it was to get expensive, then we should use aspartame. We're not pointing fingers or, you know, going down that road. We're just saying that in a time of crisis, basically, if you have an LED light and you know that can help grow a seed into something that you and your family can eat, well, you'll do it because, I mean, we've all heard, I'm sure anyone who's a parent has heard the cries of a hungry child, and you just want to satisfy that need. Anyway, we shall continue. Graham was wondering, David, can you ask David what are his thoughts on Monsanto being absorbed by Bayer? Is this the beginning of the end for the GM empire?
On an industrial scale, I think it will still stay around. But in terms of average person trying to grow their own food, eventually after these first generation GMO seed stocks run out, you can't replant them anyway. So they would never come to seed again in a local community that was growing their own food. So they'll have to rely back on heirloom seeds again so you can make sure you get a yield of seeds themselves coming out so then they could replant. And you have to save about 25% of your seed. So if you think you're going to get 100 pounds of something, I'm sorry, you're only going to be able to keep 75 because you need to keep the other, what would have grown out, you need to keep that for seed to replant for the next season. So when we talk about totals coming out of the fields, 1 does not equal 1. 1 equals 0.75 because you always need to keep a quarter of that for the replant. So GMO, I think, is going to be a thing of the past. Yeah, but it's going to come more local again, I do believe. Just go back I think we're going to reverse back into the late 1800s, early 1900s in terms of the way we live and plant and share.
Okay, good stuff. What about just in relation to seeds and DNA? We heard recently, a couple of weeks back on one of our shows, it was suggested that if you are going to plant some seeds and it will be an idea to get those seeds, put them into your mouth first and leave them there for a moment or two. And then it was suggested that your DNA will be imprinted onto or into the seed before growing. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I sure have. And it's very, very interesting because I know when you put frequency to seeds, it can change them as well. There were a couple persons also using electrical vibration and electrical frequency into the seeds to change the output. You know, they were getting what is traditional corn that we know. It grows straight and it has several, ears on it. They were putting electricity into it and getting out double stalks with like 12 heads on each stalk and kind of a hybrid between let's say sorghum and corn, but on a corn plant. And they were getting all kinds of extreme versions of the initial plant, whatever hybrid species it was, but when they hit it with the electrical vibration, it changed also. So yeah, when you talk about Nikola Tesla, the whole universe is vibration and frequency. So what can you change in that? We are vibrational frequency ourselves. So can you impart that onto a seed? It's a living thing as well. They've done the experiments where they put the writing on top of water and they can change it, writing the word love on top of your water and talking to your water can change the frequency. Yeah. So, these are ancient teachings. We're going to go back to this again when we plant our seeds or when we do our water or when we do anything. Imagine that, these seeds need to get you through the next winter and everybody's going to be praying on those seeds, literally putting their focus and energy into the seed batch to please give us the best harvest you've ever given because we really need the food, please. Will that change the output? That really is to be seen. I'm so interested in this, actually.
Well, they've actually done that. They've actually proven that talking to your plants does actually make a difference on playing music. I hate to mention Prince Charles, but he's a big believer of doing this with his Duchy of Cornwall. He's involved in doing that as well. So there must be something in it if the royals are doing it on their food. We have a couple of more questions, and then we'll get into solutions. Steve?
Yeah, I'd be afraid to put seeds in my mouth. Imagine putting potato seeds or seedlings into your mouth, and then you harvest your potatoes and they look like you. Anyway, Tim wants to know if you were aware, David, of the free energy devices that have been made but have not been made available to the general public.
Yes, and I even have some of the patents that Tesla had filed. And I've been working with a couple magnetic motor designs myself. And magnetic motors are going to be far easier than trying to put something together at Tesla's range there. So, magnets, they oppose each other. You just need two opposing disks, and then you get those to spin against each other using the Earth's magnetic field. Super simple. But, with the Tesla devices, one of the things they were finding is that the output of the energy was just astounding. And you need something, half the size of a washing machine to power like 3 American homes, including air conditioning and ovens and televisions and everything else in between. And one of those little devices for multiple homes, that bankrupts traditional archaic business.
Yeah, and of course, Tesla has been doing free energy. I mean, he was proving it on the White House lawn in 1902. So we've had it for years. So we are going back in time. We're going back in the advancement of technology. We're not going forward. We're going back. And that's the trouble. They've had more advanced technology in the past than we do now. And people don't realise that. And that's why we need all these patents of the free energy stuff. I mean, we should have anti-gravitational aircrafts. We should be flying around in cars that are anti-gravity, but we're not, because the oil cartels and big money is stopping it all. And, car engines working on water, Stanley Meyer, H2O. So all this technology is out there, but they're not giving it to us because they know no one's a big farmer. They're involved with the food. Obviously, Bayer, Monsanto, GMOs. It's all got to do with the big corporations controlling everything. We have a couple more questions, and because I want to get into solutions with you, David. So, Steve.
Okay, very, very quickly, we got two. So Joan was just wondering about shungite. We spoke recently about shungite as well, and maybe if we were to use shungite on our plants and shungite in the water, that could also be beneficial. Any information on shungite, David?
No, I'm unfamiliar with that.
Okay, that's something.
If you can explain it a little better, maybe I know it as a different term or a different name, and if you do, then I could possibly jump in on that conversation. But what you termed it as there, I'm unfamiliar with that. Yeah,
we'd say to you, just check out shungite. It's actually, you get it from Russia, and we've had people use shungite with their beehives, and the production of honey has increased because of the bees love the energy from the shungite. What happens is with the shungite is that it's the properties are, when man creates something like Wi-Fi, mobile phones, it's all done in a counterclockwise vortex. And what shungite does is, is clockwise, which is the way our body is. So it counteracts the effect of what man's devices are doing. That's the effect of. So we have, myself and Steve wear pendants with shungite on it, and you can actually have key rings, and you can actually paint your walls with shungite powder, and has loads of benefits, put it that way. So something that is worthwhile checking into. We'd recommend you do that.
Yeah, I have a chance here. I'm taking a look at some of the images. And, you know what, Alan and Steve, I have a huge problem here. Can you hold on for 15? Can you guys talk and I'll come back in exactly 15 minutes or a little bit less? Matt, can you please do that for me? I'll be right back.
Right. Well, we'll be finishing in about 15 minutes.
We're finishing in about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Is that okay?
All right, well, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to have to cut it short right now because we have a thing going on here right now. So
okay.
I'm sorry. We're going to cut it off short here. I wish I could come back in with you, but yeah, you can find me at Adapt 2030 or Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast. And stay with me, and I'll see if I can get back with you for the last 2 minutes. You keep talking, and I'll hold on, and I'll see if I can get back and jump in with the last 2 minutes, okay?
No problem
at all. Gotta go, bye.
Okay. But sometimes there's emergencies, and that's just the way it is. But yeah, just talking about the shungite, you know, people, you know, the listeners of OYM, regular listeners, know that myself and Steve talk about shungite, and we have the pendants, and we've given a few pendants out to people. If you're going to buy it, make sure you buy it off a reputable website. But that's the basic idea with shungite, is that man-made objects are designed where they're done in an anti-clockwise vortex, which is a negative vortex, and our bodies and shungite is a clockwise positive vortex. And so by wearing shungite, having it around you, will actually counteract that negative vortex that's being created. So, and we've seen benefits with Delia, who's in her 80s and suffers from hyperelectric sensitivity. When she got the shungite gifted by Nancy Hopkins, within half an hour of her using shungite, she noticed a positive difference with it. Now, she didn't say it solved everything, but she said there was a major difference with it. So a big benefit there using shungite.
Yeah, Chris also says he wears his shungite in bed, and he says that really weird dreams. I have to say, I've never noticed any weird dreams with the shungite, and as you know, I do have a small shungite pyramid. I do leave it on the bedside locker because that's where my alarm clock lives, and some people say that you can get some negative effects from just from having your alarm clock there, but it needs to be there. I can't move it any further away because it means when it goes off in the morning I'd have to get out of bed, and who wants to be doing that in a cold morning?
Now, obviously, Steve, unfortunately, when we had the power cut, and I was down for 2 days, I think you were as well, and unfortunately my solar generator batteries were not fully charged, because normally what you do is they'd be hooked up, you know, in the ideal solution. We don't have this set up yet, but ideally your batteries are normally connected to your solar panels, which are constantly charging your batteries and keeping them topped up. So when there's a power down situation, you just switch over. We don't have our generators set up to solar panels, so we just have to use a battery charger for now. And unfortunately, I did charge up my batteries a few weeks ago, but for whatever reason, when there's not enough charge, the inverters don't work. Yours was that you had them charged.
Yeah.
What does it feel like having your house lit up like a Christmas tree when everybody else is pitch dark?
I'll be honest with you. Yeah, it did go down. I did a couple of weeks previous. I did charge up both of the generators. Now, because there wasn't a whole hell of a lot of sunshine at the time, I should have actually plugged in the solar panel while we had the great sunshine, but I didn't. So I just charged them with a regular battery charger. But both of them were in the shed. They were fully topped up. And when the power went down, and I came home, I took them in from the shed, and we had one in the living room, and we had that connected up to a lamp, an ordinary LED light bulb. And
it's low power. You couldn't.
It was low power, and we had it connected up to the TV as well, and. We had the mother-in-law around because obviously it was pitch black and she didn't have any means of lighting. So we had her around, and she was able to, you know, kind of elderly people are kind of set in their ways and everything is done at a time. They're kind of institutionalized, and she likes to watch the news at 6 o'clock, and she's always done it. So we were able to have her around, have lighting, have the TV on, and she was able to watch the 6 o'clock news. So, I mean, that in itself was worthwhile. The other one, the big one, as we say, the big fella, he was out in the hallway, connected up to the transfer switch, and all the fuses, I told you, we flipped all the fuses, turned everything off, and put on the lighting circuit. And then, you know, obviously, as it got darker, the transfer switch then was switched over, the generator was switched on, the inverter was doing its business there, and up till I went to bed. Now, I went to bed, I was up for work the next morning, so I went to bed at about 11:30. So the generator had actually been going in the hall, powering the lights and some basic sockets, just, you know, some basic sockets, and that was going from about 6 o'clock to 11:30.
That's brilliant.
That is absolutely fantastic. And I mean, just for that alone, I would urge people. Everyone should be doing this. I mean, it's not rocket science, as they say. Alan and I were able to do it with basic skills, even basic soldering skills as well. And we were able to do it. And if we can do it, then, you know, we've done it in such a way that it's easy for anyone to do.
And we did the videos on YouTube.
Absolutely,
because the idea was to show people how to do it and explain it. So if you want to check out the solar generators, then go onto our YouTube channel. There's 2 videos there showing you the solar generators and what we did. And also there's a video there about the transfer switch and what that is about, because we wanted to show you how it's done and that you can do it yourself as backup. Because as David said, we're going to be getting to a situation that the weather is going to get to extremes, and we need to make sure you have a backup. Now, as I say, last week I was down for 2 days, and although it was great to get a lot of things done around the house that you wouldn't normally do because you'd no power, you do miss the fact that at night time when it's pitch dark, that you want a bit of light at least in the house, because it was where I live, in the village I live, it was pitch dark. And I'm sure it probably was around your state. Did anybody ask you to say, where did you get the...
I have to say, the following day, when as you know, my power came back at 11:30. I know you were out for another 24 hours. Yeah. Mine was back. But my wife was in the village the next day, and she did have at least 3 people stop her and say that she had power. How did you have power when no one else had power? So she explained the basic principle of the generator, and people are saying, where can we get them? But anyway, David's back.
Excellent. David, are you okay?
Yeah, a little family emergency there. So, yeah.
That's okay.
Literally, I ran, and you can hear me breathing because I ran back. I was like, get me back to the interview.
That's okay, no problem. We're actually talking about the solutions. What I was going to say was, last time when we had Hurricane Ophelia, and I had the actual lights on the house and nobody else had power, and I was going to say, if somebody came up to you and said, how come you had power and nobody else did? I was going to say, ring Jimmy in the ESB. Tell Jimmy that Alan said it's okay, and he'll switch your power on. Yeah. I don't know. I was going to do a wind-up. I don't know whether I will or not. Now, okay, David, let's focus on the solutions. We have about 15 minutes left. We're just talking about the solar energy generators, the solar generators that we built and we use successfully just to get emergency power in the house. And anybody can get them, anybody can build them. We actually have video tutorials on our YouTube channel of how we built them, and so people can go there. Plus we have a transfer switch to show you how the transfer switch works, switching over from the household mains. But the other things you were mentioning there was about planting, growing food in your house, pot plants and all that kind of stuff, and growing food. What other solutions do we have to start prepping for? What other solutions do you have that we can do?
Well, it would be the lowest hanging fruit first, and that's no pun intended. But, just the things that you would do if a hurricane's coming, or, it's just some of these things. Would you sit around and say, well, I'm going to have no water, I hope the store's open? No. You would go and you would have water available. Now, instead of having a 5-gallon jug, perhaps you'd have a 55-gallon drum ready for you. And again, some long-term food storage. How about just some simple dried beans, rice, and other types of possible protein-rich sustenance that you can find out there? The bulk food section, how many people visit that in the supermarket anymore? Most people go for something that's already prepared, made in a factory that they can pop out of a box and eat. Well, how about going back to, you buy a pound of dried beans and you just need to learn how to soak it and grow it. How about you buy bulk wheat, which then you could sprout? How about 2 birds, 1 stone, where you find those types of seeds that you could eat and prepare for food, but then at the same time you could sprout it if you need to. So sprouts will grow in a few days and you can have some food right away. Like, there's all these solutions of long-term food storage, the bulk items, the water preparation. You're going to have to think about your power, but the safeties with that. If your power's out across the entire neighborhood and you're the only ones with lights on in your house and you're broadcasting, lights in my house, you're going to have some unwanted visitors because you're the only one in the neighborhood with lights on, and they know you'll have a power generation device. But with that said, what can you forage around your house? Like in the natural environment, I know I can walk out in the back of my yard or in my neighborhood or in a forest somewhere, and I could bring home a bag of at least leaves and berries mushrooms maybe if it's in the right time of the year, of things that I could find naturally. What about the root plants around where you live? How many of those do you know that you can eat? Canna lilies. I mean, how many people would probably walk by a canna lily field and starve to death when you could eat all those plants, the roots out of it? So many solutions. It's basically thinking about living in a pioneering lifestyle. Learn what your grandparents learned, and that'll kind of be the easiest steps first. I mean, all these books, there's ag centers around in most city. There's foraging clubs in every city, you know, like looking for natural foods out in the forest. There's gardening clubs in every city. There's organic farming communities in every city. There's really no excuse for you not to be getting ready because the resources are around you, and those communities are the people that you're going to need for the support anyway. So it's like networking and building your skill set and getting the physical together. The physical, and I mean by, you know, whether it be shovels, seeds, beans, food, whatever it is. And it's going to take a combination of a few things.
Well, I think something you said there, which I think I will do and I find interesting. I have a couple of neighbours who are in their 70s, and the lady is actually from a very hardy Scottish lady from the Hebrides.
You can't eat her.
No, I can't eat her. But she is someone who knows all about this stuff because she grew up doing it. So I'm going to actually see her during the week, and I'm going to say to her, you know, in our locality, where are the places that we can go to actually forage and stuff that we can get for food? Because, as you say, you could die of starvation on something that you could actually eat. It's all about knowledge. It's all about knowing what to do and how to do it. And I think that's pretty good. Now, if there's local groups, you know, Ireland is kind of, I know we mentioned Seamus had this group down where he is, where they actually have a community and they're growing stuff. But there, things like that, co-ops like that are few and far between, I think, in Ireland. We don't have that many. And so on a local point of view, it's up to people to start getting together and organising their own prepping groups and prepping circles. So they have the knowledge between them and they can help each other. So if anything happens, for the people in the city, well, I don't really know what you can do in the city because the city's going to be the worst place in a crisis to be. The country at least you have a fighting chance.
Right, and think about that, Alan. You're going to have to be able to buy some of these things. And imagine if your debit cards or credit cards don't work any longer. What would be a secondary medium of exchange or tertiary? We could use bartering. That'd be great. But think about cryptocurrency as well. You touched on the tech there and the AI and the tech a little bit. But what about cryptocurrency, learning how to use that? Because I do believe that is going to be part of the new monetary system that will emerge out of this semi-reduction or contraction into what's coming in our traditional economies. Now, people always will have a way to buy and sell and trade, but if if the pound's not working, the euro's not working, dollar's not working, and from anything in between is having less value and people don't consider it as stable in transit, let's say it takes 20 days, 30 days, or even just your neighbors, whatever it is, people aren't going to believe in the value of the paper money as they have in these last few years. But there'll always be another alternative to that. Learning what cryptocurrency is, I'm not advocating, any one or shape. I'm just saying the tech that's there and the availability for you to buy, sell, trade with an agreed upon medium electronically without any third party is going to be another means that we're going to use as we transition through all of these changes. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Just learn what the tech is. I'm not even, I didn't even mention one yet. I'm just saying learn the tech because we're going to use it as new money.
Well, we actually don't go near the crypto stuff because we have inside information to know that that's not exactly what you think it is. And the fact is that if we have an EMP and it blows out everything, crypto is going to be pointless because your technology won't work. What you need to work with is your skills and what you have in your hands. That's your labour. That's going to be important because if we are sent back to the late 1800s for whatever reason, then crypto. Take for last week. Last week we had 2 days of power down, and okay, there was a little bit of battery in my phone, but if that was over a week, we'd have no technology. So unfortunately, there's two reasons there. One, the EMP and the power down situation where you won't be able to use technology, and two, we've heard about crypto being not exactly what it is. So unless you have it in your hand, you don't own it. And that's just kind of air taking it based on interviews we've done with guests that we've had on the show and information that we've received. But so I think the knowledge, having the knowledge, is more valuable than anything. Knowing how to make stuff, how to grow stuff, and how to forage, and then having groups of people around you that are on the same wavelength. I think that is gold dust. That's what we need to focus on.
Yeah, so let me mention that EMP for a second. Now, you talk about the charge that's coming from the sun, and when it lands on these high-tension power wires, what it's going to do is put an extra 2 volts on a line per kilometer. That is absolutely going to overcharge whatever part of the planet it hits. Now, the misnomer is that an EMP comes and it sweeps over the entire planet from stem to stern, from top to bottom, left to right, and everything's affected on the entire planet, and we go back to the Stone Age. That is not the way it really works. Even during the Carrington event, which you referenced, and that's the most well-known event that came off the CME, the coronal mass ejection, that had huge effects on all the telegraph wires, et cetera, that you're talking about, that was only really incredibly damaging in North America and parts of Europe only. The rest of the planet was not affected, even though they were also wired up slightly. You know, there was wires down in Asia at the time and other parts of, say, Eastern Europe, and just even in India at the time. But they weren't affected. Some parts of the globe were absolutely just decimated to the point where it fried and burned people and houses caught on fire and all these kind of stations and everything you're talking about, wires melting. But then on the other side of the globe, nothing happened at all. So when we talk about the EMP, yeah, it's about how intense will it be? What part of the planet's sun facing during this time? What's the tilt? What season is it in? Is it more of an equinox time, or is it a solstice time where everything's at the uber extreme of the bend of our planet in a season? It just depends. There's so many variables coming into these EMPs, but I firmly believe that there will be at least some places on the planet for sure that will survive through that, regardless if another place gets totally scrapped down to zero. There'll be another place that will be functional on the other side. So when they talk about building out these new generators and new type of infrastructure, they're saying it could take up to 3 years to get component parts back in, because they do not believe either a 100% total global event would occur during this time. It would be part of the planet that would be affected, but then getting a supply chain to get these large, you know, we just don't build normally something like that off the shelf. You have to have those custom made, these generators, et cetera. So it would be a concerted effort to get everything up and running again, but I firmly believe, like I said, there'll be other parts of the planet that'll be unaffected, even with a giant CME.
No, I totally agree. It's Russian roulette, because it depends on which part of the planet is facing the sun at the time CME happens. The EMP could be sun, could be a rogue state, or it could be the deep state doing their last bit of trouble before they finish, before they die. Maybe it's one of their it's satellites or something. You don't know. We don't know. So it's all about being prepared and being organised. So it's just, as I say, the solar generators, we're happy with the performance that we had, and we used them. What was brilliant. And although we have limited power from them, it was definitely helpful. But you got great ideas there, definitely great ideas on the on prepping and get ready. Now, I know there's loads of people out there who are prepping, and I don't know, what would you say? Would you say prep for 2 weeks, 2 months? What would be the best thing to do just to be on the safe side?
Well, a lot of preparation experts say about 3 months. 3 months, because that would allow everything to unfurl in those first 90 days or 30 days of chaos. There'd be a lot of people who would have 30 days of food or 60 days, but those will, that'll eventually dwindle if they don't know how to resupply and go forage or do anything, or even start a garden. Within a couple months, you'll definitely have some stuff to eat. Even in the first month, you could have some vegetable source to eat at that time. But those who are relying on all they have just stocked up, they're going to go through those supplies eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
So that'll generally be the people who just, prep up for 2 weeks, 30 days or something like this. But almost everybody I talked to said if you're able to hunker down in a safe spot and wait out 90 days, almost all the tumultuous wave will have passed over you. And by the time you get to be about with your community too. It's not like you can just sit in your bunker or your house or whatever, turn off the lights at night and ride this thing out. You are definitely going to go stir crazy. Your psyche will just snap if you don't have communication with others. You'll be perpetually terrified because every noise you hear will be some kind of scary noise. So it'll be about being with others around you and having that community, because so many people ask me, well, where's the safe place going to move on the planet where it's not going to be cold, where you can still grow food, and, where it's going to be safe? And my answer is always, the safest place to be is the community where you already are, because you have built networks, you know people. Sometimes if you live there for a long time, you know the same people you went to high school with. You know the same people you went to college with. You know the same people that you worked in jobs with for XYZ number of years. But that community that you've built, people know you, they trust you. You know people, you know who to trust, not trust. And, that's going to be the safest place, is the community that you're actually in, versus trying to run off to an equatorial country and drop down in the middle of Indonesia by yourself and try to set up. That's just not going to work.
Yeah. Have people around you that you know. Okay, David, we've reached that time. A big thank you for coming on the show, and appreciate you sharing the information and letting people know what's going on. We have to be prepped. We have to be organised as much as we can, because the next few years the weather's going to be pretty bad. But a big thank you for coming on. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your contact information off you, and just for people to know where to find you. Steve.
Yeah, it's great information, David. I have to say you've stored up a lot of interest on both of the chat rooms there, and the links that you did give us earlier, that we had all the kind of the social links to the websites, to all the other outlets on YouTube. Also, we have posted them up on the chat rooms, so we are going to suggest that people do go and check those out for more information. But those aside, do you have any other outlets where people can find more information, or is that it, or even just a couple of wise words to end the show?
Well, yeah, thank you for that. The Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube, I try to post videos 5 times a week, and the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast, it's a tri-weekly, or sometimes if I have more material, 3 to 5 times a week. Now, with that being said, all the information we talked about tonight, I can put all of that into a PDF with all the slides that we were referencing and the stories talked about, and the global temperatures and the record ice and the record Greenland ice and all those things that were talked about. I'll put that and send it as a link also, so you can just directly click it and then download the PDF. And again, that'll come from my side. I'll just host it on my website. But I'll go ahead, for any of you from OYM that were listening tonight and you want to get this information, so you have the slides so you can really discern and find out the information, look at it, pick it through yourself, photocopy these, give them to friends, back check, double check the information. Great. That is your responsibility to check the information. We can present it to you, but it's your ultimate responsibility. It falls on your shoulders to be responsible for yourself, to find out if this information is correct and true for you.
Brilliant.
But I'll give you the slides, not a problem. I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, that's great. Brilliant, David. Oh, wait, David, stay with us there for a minute. We're just going to go off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com and UnitedWeStrike.com.
Okay, we're back. We were just discussing the jingles there, so you may have noticed the jingle kind of ended very, very quickly. So that's something that Alan will sort out during the week. Anyway, great information there from David DuByne, and Alan was just chatting with him there during the break, and we're going to try and do a yearly hook up with David. So it'll be kind of a record where people can kind of check back and see what was David saying on OYM in 2018, 2019, 2020.
Yeah, so last year we did a 2017 with David, and obviously we just done the interview now. So next year we'll do another interview, and then each year we'll have a record or the weather changes for each year, and then we can actually track it that way. So that's pretty good. Great information. Again, it's quite kind of worrying in a way that the weather's going to get bad if we're going to have more beasts from the east, because I have to say I didn't really enjoy it. It was, you don't mind a little bit of snow, but Ireland, with a little bit of snow, Ireland grinds to a halt. But the beast from the east definitely knocked the stuffing out of the country.
It did. When you think about it, we ground to a halt, and what we got, other countries just kind of brush it to one side. They have the snow plows, let's move to one side, and life goes on.
Well, I mentioned about that snow plow that we seen. I seen on the internet.
For the car.
It was $600. And basically what you do is you bungee strap the snowplow to your car, and your car becomes a snowplow. Brilliant idea. Now, obviously, these countries have them because they always have them. So Canada, they have loads of snow and everything else. But brilliant idea. So something to consider, because if it's the case that the next 15 years and we're going to be getting extreme weather like the beast from the east for the winter, then having something like that is definitely going to be beneficial. Having a snowplow that you can put on your car. So definitely handy. And again, I suppose for the summer, you need to have some kind of rain barrel or water barrel that you can actually collect the rainwater, because if there's going to be a drought, again, we had hosepipe bans, which is now being lifted up, apparently. We are allowed to use the water again. In Ireland, would you believe? Ireland being so wet. That's comical, isn't it?
We had torrential rain there last week, and there was still a hosepipe ban in place in some locations.
It's just the wrong type of water, isn't it? That's what it is.
Well, as one of our politicians said it recently, well, when I say recently, it was probably about a year ago, that water doesn't just fall from the sky,
Oh, exactly. How Irish can you get?
Yeah.
Right, now the guests next week, as I said earlier on the show, we have the Open Your Mind conference coming up on the 2nd, 3rd and 4th of November. Myself and Steve is going to be talking at it Saturday morning. We're the first stop on Saturday morning. And so next week what we're going to do is we're going to have Trevor Ivers on the show. Trevor is one of the organisers of the Open Minds Conference, and joining Trevor we'll have Mary Helen Hensley and Andy Thomas, and we're going to be talking about basically what they're going to be talking about at the show, and just general discussion and conversation. So that should be interesting for people who are into the law, common law and the legal side of things. The week after we have a chap called Cal Washington who's involved in the In Power movement in America. And he studied the law and common law and how it's all set up, and understanding how to deal with issues like, speeding fines and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to have Cal Washington coming on that week, and the week after we're going to have, fingers crossed, if we can confirm it, with Dr. Rima LeBeau coming on, talking about, she's actually released a book on how to, can I say the word cure? I know she's a medical doctor. Cure autism, or definitely improve autism. And also we're going to be talking about vaccines. So the next few weeks we're going to have a busy schedule and interesting guests on. So it's all kind of happening. But as we mentioned in the show, if you seriously want to look at what's involved with making yourself a solar generator so you have some kind of power. Now, I know we have two types, and one of them connects to the household power, and you might not want to do that. But if you just really want to make a little generator in your house so you have emergency power and emergency lighting, even enough power just to turn on the telly and watch a bit of telly while the power is gone, especially if you have kids and stuff like that, then the videos are on YouTube and you can have a look at them. And if you have any questions about them, then email us, and if we can point you in the right direction or help you in any way, we will endeavour to do that.
Can I say there is one negative thing about having the generators, and this is something that I never thought of, but it was mentioned to me after the last power cut when the power came back, and that was that, you remember like the days when the power went out and you lit some candles and there was no TV, so it was candles and torches, and the whole family lit the fire or the gas stove or whatever it was, and the family sat in the one room and they talked. And that was one that I was told was missing from our last power cut, because we had the generator. Life kind of went on, the TV was on, and we just kind of sat there in front of it. And we still had house lights as well, albeit LED lights. So yeah, there are downsides to technology as well. So it was great in one respect, but in another respect, you kind of missed it, the lighting the candles bit,
Yeah.
Well, you didn't.
Oh, well, I didn't. We were lighting the candles and we had flashlights, and it wasn't too much of a pain, but I would have liked the idea. The fact I had the technology, I did charge the batteries, but obviously they didn't, they didn't stay charged for long. The whole idea is, again, having the solar panels, which will trickle charge the batteries, so you don't need to keep charging them. But we haven't got to that stage yet due to a lack of finances. But there you go. The whole idea is to do that, and then obviously do a video and then show people how to do it, and pass it on. So that's the general idea. So, but if you have any ideas, excuse me, I have to clear the throat. If you have any ideas regarding the prepping or local communities, I like the idea of that community there that Seamus emailed us in. It's a community grow up that needs to prepare big time as the GSM intensifies. So it's a community grow up. Now that's a very good idea for a local community. Some communities can get together and work together, and unfortunately other communities can't. It's just the way it is. Maybe it's just mindsets. So it's just, I think the best thing is just to work with people that you get on with and put something together. I think that's the best solution. When you want to get prepared for what's coming down the line. Now on the show, do you know who's on the show, Steve? On People's Internet Radio?
I think Barry Prince is up next with the big puzzle. And we've also been asked to just give a plug for tomorrow night on People's Internet Radio. I think that's the Three Amigos. They will be on tomorrow evening, and they have Paul Webster, and he's going to be talking about bills of exchange, or he's going to be talking about bills of exchange and promissory notes, etc. So that'll be quite interesting. That's tomorrow evening on People's Internet Radio. Okay, how's your week? How's it? What's planned for your week? Anything interesting? I don't know. You'll hear all about it next Sunday. I don't know what the week's going to bring. As I mentioned there earlier, we've got a car that needs to go to the doctor, and mother-in-law that's going to be coming to stay with us for a while after her accident. So don't know where it's going to bring us. By the way, I could be living with you by the middle of next week. That might be the case. By the way, myself and Steve, as some people know, are involved in the local men's shed. And for people who want to learn how to use the hands and make stuff and do all that, the men's sheds are fantastic. And there are women's sheds out there. So, I like the idea. And I said to Steve before we went live tonight that I'm actually kind of getting more and more away from the technology, which I've been involved in since I've been young, and I'm actually starting to make stuff and use my hands and do woodwork and all that kind of stuff, and it's actually it's great enjoyment, it's great fun. So if there is a local men's shed near you, I recommend joining it and then learning, using your hands and your skills, because that might come in handy as well. If we are having power downs and you need to make stuff or learn how to make stuff. So just something to bear in mind, and the ladies can go to ladies' sheds. They are there as well. You can attend them. Right, for myself, for Alan James, take it easy. Have a great week. If you have any news, let us know, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Okay, and for myself, Stephen George, all that remains for me to say is it's been a fantastic show, great information. Thanks to everybody who joined us on the live streams this evening, also everyone who contributed and everyone who was there in the chat rooms. Thank you for joining us. If you're listening to the podcast, thanks for downloading, and don't forget, we're here every Sunday from 7 to 9 p.m. GMT. Also, do check out the website, OYMradio.com. And until next week, stay tuned. I think Barry Prince is up next with a big puzzle on PIR. So catch you later.
Open your mind.